Okay. Okay, let's introduce this out and then we'll just jump right in, all right?
Okay.
All right, just call it whatever it is. Hey, what's up, people? Como vai? Tudo bom? Espero que suas dias estão maravilhosos. I hope you guys are excited because we at Curitiba Rugby are bringing you something new. This is with AK. My name is Gift Egbelu. AK runs Curitiba Rugby. I'm just a guy that helps with Curitiba Rugby, and we're about to tell you about yourselves in Brazil as a South African and a Nigerian-American living in Brazil simultaneously. We're very worldwide, all right? AK, man, how you doing today?
I'm fine. Thanks for that intro. That was quite good. So it's two Africans talking about
two Africans talking about
in South America. So that's brilliant. Do we have a lot to talk about? Yes. Are we outspoken? Most probably we're going to ruffle some feathers. But in the end of the day, it's for a better good. Rugby is in a good state, I think, at the moment in the world. I see the people complaining about the bomb squad or nuke squad France is using, or South Africa use it first. But you know what? Rugby is changing. And I think as long as World Rugby just leave us alone a little bit and not change the rules a lot, rugby will progress. So if you look at the Six Nations,
Amen.
Phenomenal rugby we've seen at the moment. A team like Italy, man, they're coming up. They're coming up. And I think, you know what? I'm happy for them. But it can't mentally be good if you're playing well or you're playing better, but you're still losing. So at least I've got a few clubs playing in the URC now. They're playing good rugby.
Right.
And it's good. I like seeing that. It can't be nice for them on a losing streak every time.
Well, they're at least getting one guaranteed win out of the Wales team, which is a sad sacrifice on the other side of it as well, too. That you have a young team, though now a change of coaching, which I think is a very positive. I think that was necessary. But you see a young team in Wales in a country in economic shakeup, trying to be able to, well, at least rugby-wise, trying to find their way. So Italy benefits, and it gets to at least feel winning and not being in last place for once. But the sacrifice is that other historical program. But it does make for a great Six Nations at the same time where you get the full spectrum.
I just love the Six Nations. When I grew up, you didn't get to see a lot of Six Nations. But living in the UK and watching Six Nations, it's a lovely competition. I think it's a great competition.
I won't
There's
lie.
talks of South Africa joining the Six Nations. I'm totally against it. Same like I think Rassi said it as well over the weekend. There's no space for a Southern Hemisphere team to be in a Six Nations. That's a European competition. A lot of tradition there. I don't think we should be there. What I do think is for a yearly calendar, they need to organize that. And most probably you've got to play the Champions Cup, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, and Argentina more in the beginning of the year,
right?
To make things a bit easier on everybody, especially the players.
I do think that in terms of like the Six Nations, I think obviously I still believe that they should have a rotation. Is the one time that I'm in agreement with being able to have a challenger for the last place positioning. And to remove any doubts whether a Georgia or a Spain or a Portugal should be able to compete into it. Whoever loses the Six Nations or end up with a wooden spoon has to compete in the tournament to be able to maintain or leave. And that's the one tradition I feel like they should change. As far as South Africa going up there, I think they did enough with URC. I think URC is
more than enough.
Yeah. I think if there was anything that would require South Africa to be in competition with the Six Nations, it would be having a rugby championship Six Nations champions battle for the international.
I think that, like a Super Cup, like they got
exactly
football, the Super Cup, like the best player in the Southern Hemisphere play there. I think that could be done as well. Or whoever won the URC play against. There's so many international competition play against Super Rugby team. But then again, you've got to have a look at the load on the players.
Right.
Is there too much rugby? So we can have a look at all those things. It's a tough one. It's a tough one for World Rugby to see where they're going to go. How many games can a player actually play? what cap are you going to put on players? So all of a sudden, if you're going to play, for instance, the Stormers, I'm a big Stormer supporter, so we're going in, not doing too well in the URC this year, but it's okay. Champions Cup, or the old Heineken Cup now, Investec, European Cup. That's a tough one. I don't think the South African teams realize how strong that competition are.
When the French want to play, it's when they actually want to play. I will push a little bit against that. I am one that I'm still trying to determine whether that competition is as necessary, because of the fact that you have 3 competitions that almost exist at that exact same time. It will be Investec, it'll be Premiership, and then it's URC. And whenever you have that, it makes sense.
And the European Championship.
And the European Championship, exactly. So when you have all those going on at exactly the same time, it means that obviously the players, obviously take loads off, which I think is phenomenally disappointing when it comes to trying to actually say who is the best in that region. Yeah. And then on top of that, you have like whole teams like France is notorious for half-assing on one championship. Like top 14, no away team ever plays anything. Like it's Toulouse and Boudreaux, and then everybody else just is like, hey, I got to go on the road. Screw it all, and we're only going to wait to be at home. Yeah. In the championship, in the Champions Cup, European Championships, that's whenever they tend to upgrade. But then on the URC side, South Africa pulls back. Obviously, South Africa pulls back on Championships Cup sometimes because they're trying to win in South Africa and URC. Yeah. And Premiership is just all over the place. I don't even know.
I think it's a very tough. It's basically like the football, the UEFA Cup. So you got the local cup, and then you play the big one. Is it necessary for World Rugby? I think so. I think it's a wonderful competition. The French competition, I think, is just by far the strongest and biggest and best.
They don't care about money.
It's good rugby. If you look at the first division, good. Second division, good. Yeah. Third division, good. It's not hiding away. Right. If you look at the Premiership, hey, it's a long competition. There's a lot of teams in it. Is it a good competition? I don't know. I like watching it.
I think it's top heavy. It's very top heavy. I think you get the Saracens, you get the Harlequins, Northampton. You tend to Bristol from time to time. And, those ones tend to at least be consistently good. Yeah. I think whenever you get like Newcastle and, you have who's the bottom feeders this year? I can't even remember. And that's the point. Like they're so forgettable. They're so forgettable once they play. Yeah,
for me, it's just the Premiership. Would I watch URC much more because South African teams are in there? Yes. Would I watch Super Rugby? Yes. Because all of a sudden, Super Rugby last year and the year before, it was a bit blah. But all of a sudden this year, it's excellent tries. The tries scored is magnificent tries. Is the game is becoming better again? Yes. Right. Do they miss South African teams? Well, I think it's past that. I think it's past that. It's a new thing now. I like what I see.
You know what helped it? I think the development of Fijian Drua and now kind of Moana Pacifica. I don't always have a lot of praise for World Rugby, but World Rugby investing in Fiji having a professional 15s team, I think was one of the most necessary things, because it was getting sad that Fiji has as much talent as it does. And even though I love sevens, I felt like they were getting scammed basically in every other one for other teams to be able to basically pick and choose who they want from the Fijians, whether they're going all the way up to Europe or they're getting stuck in New Zealand, not being able to represent for themselves. And so you had that. And then with the Moana Pacifica, shout out to the Tongans. I don't always believe in their rugby, but that development that they've also been able to have in that, now led with Artie Savea, they are legitimately actually making threats. And I think that's why it makes it easier that South Africa isn't a part of it, because now you kind of have that naturally talented classical team that's there, but is not just the same rotation of the Reds, the Chiefs, the the Blues.
They're the neighbors.
Let's go. Let's go. Hey, man. Hey, rugby people all around. Hey, tell them to get on the pod.
No, it's brilliant. That's the volleyball. They're next to us. They're always having a chat. No, listen, I think it's brilliant. They're investing in the South Sea Islands. It's about time.
Yeah.
Love their rugby. So you don't always just want to see them in World Cup here. Oh, all of a sudden. Lots of the players don't really play there. They all played in Europe to make money, send back to their families and stuff. Or if you look at New Zealand, that's one of their academies. Understand? Right. Now all of a sudden that academy is not falling away, but hey, they want Samoan, they want to play for Samoa. They Fiji, they want to play for Fiji. Exactly. Is it a good thing? Yes. Australia rugby as well, putting money there. That's brilliant. So I love seeing Super Rugby getting back to their strength and playing good rugby.
You know what is actually impressive is the fact that Australia Rugby is really trying to scratch back with Union. Because I'll be honest with you, I basically thought they were dead. Obviously, Rugby League has completely taken over Australia. And I felt like because Australia took it for granted so heavily that their 15th was naturally going to diminish out. And we saw that, some results with the World Cup and even with Olympics. But I think that they've been risen up. One, they've been putting a lot more time into their professional team. To get a team like the Western Force to be good, which I thought last year was maybe the third worst club team in the world at the professional level, only behind the Carolina Anthem in MLR, and maybe the one of the teams in Japan, I can't remember their name. I felt like it was just those two teams were worse than the Western Force. And now this year, Western Force has elevated crazy. They're actually competitive. And it feels like we're getting a normal competition out of Australia again. Brumbies, good. Waratahs, significant. And New Zealand now feels like they get competition. Reds doing their thing, No,
I think it's brilliant, Super Rugby. It's good rugby. I'm glad they're up and running. There's a Lions tour as well this year, so Australia needs to stand up. And it's good. Everybody was written them off last year, and it was sad to see that this Australian rugby team get written off even before they start playing. A year into to Europe, it was way better. They played way better rugby. Now you see Super Rugby, they're playing better. That's good.
Let me ask, as a SAFer, considering that Australia and New Zealand have been so traditionally rivals for you guys, when you look at a team like Australia and the struggles that they've been having with maintaining participation, obviously financial issues, et cetera, like that, is there the inner rivalry inside you that goes like, ha, good, take it, but also like you don't want them to lose too bad because you want to be able to fairly beat them? Or is it kind of just like, I don't want anybody to lose in this, and I just want us to be able to just play good rugby?
No, there's a part that's always happy, yeah? Oh, they're not playing good rugby. Yeah, we've got a chance. No, we got 2 World Cups behind ourselves. So it's 8 years. New Zealand went through the same phase as well. 8 years. So you can understand in that 8 years why a lot of people supported New Zealand. Right. And now South Africa is dominating the rugby world at the moment, internationally. But do we need Australia? Yes. World Rugby need Australia to function. We need good teams. Argentina is like sometimes the showers over here. So you got a nice hot shower and there's always a little bit of ice cold water dripping down. And that's Argentina. So they will play brilliant rugby in the championship, and then they go in a year-end tour, and then they go and lose 2-3 games. And you think, man, you got a biggest opportunity to be 4th in the world, and this is what happens. So it's always a hit and miss. It's basically they a bit like Scotland, isn't it?
Well,
they just don't have that consistency.
I think this is one thing that interests me, and I think this is good for us to be able to enter and start talking about South American rugby, because I think with Argentina, the more I learn about Argentina, the more impressed I am with the system that they've been able to create, considering all the obstacles they've had. And obviously what the results they've been able to get, like last year, getting wins against France, even if you say it was at home and maybe they weren't fielding their best team. I don't care. It's a win against France. It's a win against France, right? And then obviously beating New Zealand and Australia and keeping it really close with South Africa on first ground. But with Argentina, they have this opportunity here where I feel like they could be like what New Zealand does with the South Pacific and kind of just take talent from within the area. But I can see them trying to be able to help develop South America, right? And see like, what do we have with our talent here where we can hold most of the guys that keep going overseas and around and then try and bring them back. What can we do to be able to establish here? Because they got the pieces. Even Italy's fielding. The guy who's their coach is Argentinian.
Yeah, Argentina got a close relationship with Italy. If you look back at some of the best players of Italian is born Argentinian. If you look at Paris, he's Argentinian. Dominici, the 10, that's also Argentinian. A lot of Argentinians people play in the Italy league, which is good. But if you look at South America rugby, as far as I know, in Argentina, rugby is not professional. So that's where this Super Rugby Americas, what we're going to talk about as well today, is coming in. For them to create, I think they got 4 teams in there. 1, 2, 3, four teams they've got in the championship. And they've got in the MRL, they've got Miami Sharks as well.
Right.
Which is a good thing. So if you want to develop your talent, you got to send some of your players to Europe to earn that money. Because it's not professional in your country. So what you do is you get them in camps. You can monitor them all the way from Argentina. You've got all the technology to do that. They are all in professional setups, which is help as well. So you won't be worried about fitness or injuries. The clubs are looking after them. So when you get here, your younger ones, you've got Super Rugby to look forward to. So you got is it 6 teams in there? 6, 7 teams?
In Super Rugby?
7 teams, so 6 matches, 12 matches you've got in a year for them. Then you still got a team owned by Argentinians in the MRL, which is good as well.
They're okay. They're not good. They're serviceable.
Yeah. At the moment, I think, you know what, dipping their feet into the MRL. I watch a few games of the MRL. Well, you got 1 or 2 that's really standing up. The games are slower. So I think it's where they could tap in is most probably what they've been doing. Is get all the old guys with big names. And you need that heroes to come in and play in the MRL. And I think what Miami Sharks could do as well is maybe get 1 or 2 of the older Argentinian boys to play there. Because they got a big following already, which is nice. They've got a market over there, and they can send their players over there as well to help the national team progress. So I think it's a very good thing. The same thing with South American rugby. What are we doing South American rugby? They've got 4 teams, and there's 4 or 5 players playing for the Cobras. Right. The Brazilian team. There's some playing for Celtic. So they've got this group of 4, and then who's extra, they lend them out or borrow them out to the other clubs.
So let me ask this, because you've been here for a while and have a better understanding of this system in South America and particularly here in Brazil. When we're looking at a system like Argentina, which is a lot smaller of a country than people give it credit, it's very long, but it's very small, and it's sparsely populated to say the least. So you have Argentina who has figured out how to set up the club to be able to create the membership that is fiercely loyal and then set up academy regionally where they are able to bring people in sections instead of having to congregate into one area, like bringing them down to Santiago. No, that's Chile. To bring them down to
Buenos Aires.
Buenos Aires, thank you.
Yeah.
But instead they have it sectional into 4 quadrants where they have an academy in each one and then build the clubs around that. And then it helps them be able to develop their players. Why do you think with a place like Brazil that has, ironically, more resources financially, more population, has a similar culture in terms of like football is a first mentality and other sports. No, I guess Argentina does more various sports than maybe Brazil does, but Brazil has that capability to quadrant out the country or maybe make a little bit more to find that talent pool. What do you think has been the reason they haven't been able to do so much on that to be able to elevate themselves? Because the women's side, it seems to be working. Women at least win the South America and can be occasionally competitive on the international stage. The men's, on the other hand, Chile's got a little bit over them. Argentina's got over them. Uruguay's got over them.
If you look at it, there's a few things I think we need to have a look at. If you look at South America, Brazil is a lot more American than the rest of. So if you look at Chile, they're way more European. Argentina, way more European. Rugby over there is way bigger. They've got a culture there for rugby. And the same, we talk about Uruguay, we talk about Paraguay as well. It's a lot more, they've got the market for rugby, which is good, which helps. So this is my opinion only. As the lawyer said.
Why we do this? Well, why we yap on the mic.
we have to say that. Now, what do Brazil do? Once again, women rugby is one side, men's rugby is another side. I don't think you can put everything in one box and say, "Oh, this is going to work." A copy paste from another country and do it here. You've got to see what works. So if you have a look, where's most of the rugby? São Paulo. So it's just naturally you're going to think, well, where are we going to invest? We're going to invest more in São Paulo because most of the clubs are there. So then you got to have a look, where can we develop more? So you've got rugby in Rio, you've got rugby in Paraná, you've got it in Santa Catarina, and you go down to Rio Grande do Sul, there's rugby as well. And now with Melina coming up, as I say, in the northeast region, they've got a good club there. It's a professional club, so that's women's. So if we just keep it to men at the moment, with thinking of what happens in the Cobras setup, that's the franchise team, professional franchise team, as we got to say. Is it working at the moment? Is the men's rugby working? You said Argentina, well, they've got that culture of rugby. Brazil don't have that.
Right.
Could we do more? Yes, we could. Whose job is it? I think that's where it comes unclear. What's the job of the confederation? Yeah. What's the job of the federation? And what's the job of the clubs? So how does the system work now? And that's one thing, most probably communication from the confederation would help as well. Because there's no real communication. What is the plan? What's going on? If you ask people now, did they watch the Cobras play? No. And that's the sad part. You got to say, well, we got one national team here. Why should people not watching it? You think, oh, because we're going to lose. So we got to think, okay, what's happening with the Cobras? That's a whole different story. Right. So we talk about development first. Well, Brazil rugby got a development department. Are we having the right competitions for us to move forward? I think no. Is the system working for the men's? No, it hasn't been working. It's been a broken system for a long time.
Before we continue on that, what would you define as the system in this? I think that's really specific because if to know what works or doesn't work is to understand what is actually the function going on right now.
What's now? They're all congregate in São Paulo, São Paulo capital. At NAR is the base. So what they do is, if you got good players around, they take that player. Let's take Curitiba, for example. Okay. We've got a good player here, so we'll take the player, take them to São Paulo, and that's basically forgotten for the club. He's there now. You're lucky enough if he will play a game because you're too far out. So if he's go there, you got to think, okay, where's he going to play? You want him to play for Curitiba, but then again, it's too far. Would he play for another club in São Paulo? And then back it goes. It goes to a club in São Paulo to play there. So once again, São Paulo is winning that one.
Right.
That's the system working out. So they go there, they train every day, 5 times a week at night. It's working. We got to have a look at the scores. The Cobras is our franchise. It costs a lot of money.
Right.
So you go, first of all, everything is about money. Is the money throwing in the right direction?
Sports.
Most probably not, because we're losing. Do we have a plan? I don't know. I don't see the plan. It's chop and changing every team every week. Do we know who's the best fly-off? This year's quali games, we got to qualify against Chile to play in the World Cup men's. Is that a good opportunity for us? Yes. So key positions. Who's the number one in those positions? Who's can play? Or you just give everybody some game time. If you do that in this kind of competition, for me is, well, you just bring more money on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
So is the system broken? Yes. Has the system been broken for a while? Yes.
Well, the real question is, did the system ever work to begin with? If even broken, is it actually just doing what it was built to do, and it was just poorly built from the ground up?
Well, you can have a look at it. Oh, what worked in the past? What is going to work now? Rugby moved on.
Right.
So the clear communication should be, listen, let's sit around a table. Let's get people in that is at clubs, at federations, and think what is the best way going forward, rather than same thing that's happening at England Rugby. All the old boys sit around a table. They got no real touch with the game at the moment, no real touch what's going on in the state of each area in Brazil. So now you're sitting down and say, okay, are the same people going to make that same decision? I almost probably think that's the wrong thing. Get a think tank in and say, listen, get 10 people in from all over Brazil, and let's have a think. What's the best plan for men? How can we run a high performance all over? Are we going to break it into, like they had in the past, academies? Would academies work? Well, that's another discussion. How are we going to do it? I think it's a lot of, I always think, listen, more people can sit around the table with more ideas, the best thing will happen.
Yeah, I think it always helps. And that's one part, I think, even in rugby as a whole, has always had a problem with being able to accept the diversity of ideas when it comes to the development of the sport, because of the fact that life does change, right? Like, what we had from the 2000s is going to be very different than 2010s to what we have now post-COVID 2020. Completely different mentalities and objectives. I always do wonder, though, because it even hits within the U.S. for a long time, that whenever you have a country that's very vast, like Brazil is, like the U.S. is, there is that difficulty where it comes to trying to watch how everybody does, watch where everybody is, basically scouting. It's very difficult to scout, especially if you don't have a paid scouting department to be able to do that. So you're just basically hoping that people give you enough good tape that they'll be interesting and that they will be able to adapt to whatever happens once they get into the main stage. My issue that will come is that you have a situation like you talked about with Brazil, where everybody goes into Sao Paulo. And then if they go to Sao Paulo, they either are, one, having to guarantee to stay there so that they can be able to work with that Cobras team, which means that their off season has to result with being part of clubs that are in that Sao Paulo area. But you've basically kind of stranded people there. So that affects mentality, which I think plays into how you play. The other part then is, what are you gleaning from anywhere else? So Brazil, because it is so large, you would think it would want to work within its biggest cities. Curitiba, obviously. Rio, obviously. Sao Paulo, obviously. Manaus, possibly. Salvador, I would think that would be an area that financially obviously isn't beneficial, but would have to be a hot talent bed. And then obviously Rio Grande do Sul area, I don't remember the capital city, and then I would assume Minas Gerais.
Porto Alegre.
Porto Alegre, same. Thank you.
I think, as you said, we got to sit around the table and say, listen, going forward, what is the best for Brazil rugby? Is it taking everybody to São Paulo, carry on training there? What we can see, it's not working. Right. So I always say, and I heard it from other people as well, ego in Brazil is killing rugby. Right. And that's the thing. Put the ego aside, put your pride to the side, and sit and let's think, what's the best way forward? The best way forward. Let's talk men's, not women's, because women's is I would say new, but the 50-man game is starting now. Yes, they need to train together because they need that, because there's no competition. Right. Men's on the other side, do we have the correct competition here? Is the Super 12 working? Well, I don't think so.
Well, what? Let me ask. What did you feel is supposed to be the objective purpose of the Super 12?
Well, for me at the moment, what is the objective for Super 12 is, well, there's 12 teams going to play, and then the top 4, they carry on with the one round. There's another round. Well, it's a bit blah. Understand? So you're thinking, is it working? Is it the really top level competition? Because we spoke earlier on about the French rugby, Argentinian rugby in Argentina, Super Rugby. So you want to create that competition, and it's an amateur competition. Right. So you can say there's a few things you can have a look at. The Super 12 is 12 teams. Too many teams for Brazil, most probably. Should we work out another way of development? Yes. The development, I always say development is like a hamburger. You got to work from the bottom, you got to work from the top to get the juicy bit in the middle. If your team is not winning, because now we look at the Cobras is here. Mm-hmm. They are our national team, because Cobras is basically our Brazilian team. Yeah. Give and take, the Argentinas come and go. If they're not winning, the rest doesn't really want to be there. Is our rugby of Super 12 a good quality rugby? No, it's not.
Wait, do the Cobras compete in Super 12 as well?
No.
Okay.
That the players just go back.
Okay. I was just about to be like crazy.
Yeah. That's the worst thing for me at the moment. To look at things, we should have less teams, and create our better players and put them in a professional setup all over Brazil. So most probably break it down. Say your club, they got to create a road. So where you come from, in your club, in your area, in your state, and then all of a sudden you got to get into, let's call it a franchise team. I've got a franchise top on today, but it's not the idea at all. It's just getting into a franchise team. A franchise team, they go and play for Brazil. So out of the franchise teams, you choose your Brazilian team. That's where the coaches of Brazil could say, listen, we are going down to the franchise teams and having a look at that. We're going to help them. Franchise teams are going to work like they work all over the world. You got your own coaches there. You got your own S&C. You work there. But the confederation could help a bit. Understand? They can still do the analyzing of the players and talk to the players and say, okay, this is our goal. But you can't tell me, listen, your Broncos got to be under 5 minutes, and you got to pick up 10 kilograms of muscle. All that within a year or 8 months. Well, that's a joke. Okay, so we got to be realistic of where we are and how we're going to go forward.
So I think that idea, especially when it comes to regionalization, is I think I agree with that. I do worry though that it determines how many what's the best way? How to develop players that lack means. Because what always tends to happen with those regional teams is that even though you're congregating everybody into a single spot, or at least try and get the best, you still want to have those feeder teams, basically like why we have Division 1, 2, 3, etc. Right? So if regional teams are D1 and you have that, let's say per state, or so, arguably. And then from those teams is what you determine your Cobras and then your national team. What happens is the small teams that need to be there, now you either are going to have not enough teams to develop players that are far below the playable, like high competition playability, but would be good for fan base development or community development, but you don't have enough players to do that, or you end up restricting players who simply have the means to travel, which we all know ends up being that ultimate, F you in the back when it comes to trying to develop, is people didn't have the money to be able to ride. People didn't have the money to be able to go. And that's no fault of their own. Just
that's making it. Transport is killing it as well, because you've got long distance travel.
Right.
So that's the difficult one. If you have a look, I think that's where the Confederation got to come in and say, listen, be way clearer in saying, well, this is the development pathway we're going to take. And not just, because we've got a academy in São Paulo capital and we got one in San Jose, and the players are playing there, and that's it. Well, you got to look beyond São Paulo, because if you just invest there the whole time, rugby is going to stay there. And Brazil is bigger than São Paulo. If you start investing in other states as well. The other thing, have a look at states, because we got Curitiba. What teams are closest to us? So we've got teams in Santa Catarina that's closer to us than teams that's actually in Paraná closest to us.
Wow.
So should we change that competition as well and have a look at the size of Brazil, the transport? What is the quickest way to sort that out? So development side, we got to create a pathway. For me, Brazil don't have a pathway. It's just random. Well,
it's basically, I see you, and then I like you. Come on over to the team. Come on over to Cobras. Maybe you get a chance to work with the national team. That kind of basically.
And I'll talk youth as well. Youth is the same thing. Well, we can say a few things that the coaches who's actually in part of the Brazilian setup told some players, and like, if only you played rugby in São Paulo. I'm like, you can't really say that, can you? You should be, if you're good enough, there should be money to take you to São Paulo in camps and get you trained. So that's why I say the system is broken, because are the best players actually there?
Typically, especially if you're not able to invest in other places.
Yes, of course, because that's what you've been working on for the last 10 years. You haven't looked outside. You haven't developed rugby. So if you look at the south of Brazil, normally the south of Brazil was strong rugby. Now you got only one or two teams that's really putting their hand up. And you got to ask why. Why is that happening, and why? So there's a lot of whys coming in, and I think that's where the Confederation got to come in and say, listen, that's it. Let's sit around and say, how can we get the South stronger? Or is it time for the clubs to say, you know what, Brazil Rugby Confederation, we're going to stand together now, and we're going to create our own competitions. And we're going to create our own dates. After that, we'll have a look at your dates. Because now we are waiting for Brazil Rugby to send us the dates to organize our state championships and all that. But in the end, shouldn't we just say the clubs, let's sort our own thing out. Let's do our own thing and see how it's going to work.
No, you know what's funny? The Florida in the U.S., Florida did basically that. Because they're so disassociated from most of the other states, especially if you get to South Florida, which is, you're talking about almost a 10-hour drive alone to get to the border, which would be Georgia, and then another like 3 hours before you get to another competition. They basically created their own and kind of isolated, and then come, club championship playoff time, they'll maybe travel out. But most of their competition stays within the region of Florida constantly. So it would make sense if the South regionalized and separated out. But I would wonder, again, looking from the outside in, I'm still trying to understand the financial systems of how everybody works. But if you do carve out the South, it would seem like you would have, if you have Curitiba, at least Porto Alegre, Florianopolis, like that little trifecta there would be a pretty effective, fundable, and viewable setup of competitions to be able to pull from, which could leverage more academies to be able to develop players, if that would make sense. Would that be an accurate look at it, or is that?
Yeah. So if you have a look at the academy, I'm going to tell you a story. What happened? So in my first stint here at Curitiba, they started with the
Shoot it
academy.
a year. When was your first stint? All right, some of us need to know.
So that was 2012 to 2016. So the academy started in 2014, 2015, around there. So you had the coach, the national coach. I'm not going to name his name. He's coming down. He's going to Paraná. He's seeing me. I said, okay. So the first day we had Curitiba, he's going to spend 2 days here to see all the clubs. I said, no, 100%. Let's go. One day we in Curitiba. Now we got to drive to Lobo Bravo. Yeah, that's what a problem. That's about a 5-hour drive. And he's like a little boy in a car. Like, are we there yet? I said, no, it's a 5-hour drive. We got there. There's a few players there. We're having a look at it. I said, no, next stop, we're going to Londrina. And he's looking at me for, how long is that? I said, no, that's another 5 hours. Yeah, so it's a long way, buddy. And then after we're done there, we're going down to Toledo. That's 8 hours. And he's looking at me and he's like, is there an airport here? I'm like, yes, there's an airport. He said, you can just go and drop me at the airport. I'm going back to São Paulo. So it's just the idea of the size. So a lot of people don't understand the size. Right. So if you got Paraná, it's massive. Right. So is the academy going to work here? Well, are you going to put up an academy that serves all the clubs, or are you going to put up an academy and serve the big team, and you work with only the big teams? So you got to create that road. You got to create that pyramid. And I think that is where everybody got to sit around the table and say, listen, what is the best way going forward?
Right.
If you look at Cobras now, well, they got 3 games in. And they've got, 153 points against them? Well, that's a bit shocking. Okay, so and you get, how many points did they score? 56. So it's almost 100 points difference.
Right.
That tells me, well, there's a problem. Is the players good enough? Is the coaching good enough? Could we always blame the coach? Most probably not. But we got to say, for me, is we have to look at a system. We got to go back and say, listen, things are not working. What's the best way going forward? If you look at the data center they've got here on the website, if you look at scrums, yes. What's Brazil's good point? Scrums, yes. They play a bit more of a forward game. Scrums line up. Yes, they first, second. Then you got tackles. Well, they second on the list with 76% completion rate, but they still got 100 points against them.
Well, which is probably why their tackle rate is so high, because most times they're on defense.
They're just defending. So if you've got 100 points against you, you definitely slip in tackles in 3 games. So my opinion only, do the coach know who's his best team? I don't think so. Would it help the players to know, listen, I'm number 1 in the pecking order, I'm number 2, I'm number 3. For me, that's a clear tell sign. If I know I'm number 1, I rest on my laurels. Well, number 2 is going to take my place.
Right.
Are you just, as we call it, well, the bomb squad name has been throwing around now. Yeah. So are you going in with a 6-2 split? It seems to me the coach liked the 6-2 split. For me, perfect. Yeah. 6-2 split is always a good thing. If you got that forwards to come on, forwards work harder. Do they know who's number 1, who's number 2? Who's your best prop? Who's your best tight end? Is he going to play all the games? Most probably not. So you got to tell the players in advance, saying, listen, this one's you number 1. This is the best team that's going to play. Yeah, or your squad. In your squad, you can rotate as well. But then again, because you've got foreign players in here, you've got to keep an eye on as well and say, listen, we're going to play as a big year for us. We're going to play quali games. Should we bring in a 10 from Argentina, who I think is, well, as I said, my opinion only. I don't think they should have left him in Argentina. He's definitely not good enough. Should they play a Brazilian on 10? Yes, I think we've got a Brazilian at 10 who's a good player. Does he need time there? Yes. Do he need some experience alongside him? Yes. Right. Do we got a good 15? I think we've got a good 15. Most probably his tackles is not up where the coach needed to be.
Right.
But if you look at World 15s, how many of them are actually solid tackles? Not a lot.
I mean, it's a dime a dozen. But you know what? As you're talking about this, it makes me think of one thing. What is the identity of Brazilian rugby? So, like how you talked about like leaving the Argentinian that you feel that probably could have just stayed in Argentina as a fly half and bringing the Brazilian in who might be a little inexperienced but has a higher ceiling, arguably. What is that identity of them? Because, you know, we can say South Africa is, you know, big man that spread the ball out wide and basically have that 2015 New Zealand style now. You know, Argentina is big guys and they want to keep breaking down the middle, and to shoot it out the outside. You know, we can name a style for basically every major rugby national teams or country of origin, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to Brazil, like it still feels, and probably it's very similar to the U.S. It's like throwing. Ooh, I lost you.
What is Brazil? Brazil rugby.
Yeah. So what is Brazil's identity?
I think forward play. They got big forwards that can really move the ball as well, and they got quick backs. But are we playing to our strengths?
Right.
Most probably not. Doesn't make me feel sad seeing, because I know the quality of players. I know some of the players. I won't say I know all of them. I've seen them play. Can they do better? Yes. But then there's always two sides of things. Huh? So it's not the first time they actually playing together. They've been together for more than 5 years.
Okay.
Most probably longer, some of them. So you got to have a look and say, is it time for that senior player to step up and take the bull by the horns and say, listen, this is how we're going to play it? Or are they going to say, you know what? Is the senior player just here to play a bit of rugby and that's it? There's no motivation for him to really extend, to go better, take the team on. So,
complacent.
Yeah. So you say, okay, what's the quality of Brazil? How are they going to play? I think forward play. But is the mentality there? Is that mentality there of being better every year? Every training I go in, I want to be better. Well, if you look at body language speaks volumes. Saturday, well, you can see the body language was just not there.
Yeah.
Just not there. It's sad.
You know,
the challenges, same thing. It's sad.
But there's another component that goes into this that I feel gets missed, which is not just the identity of the rugby of the area, but the culture. Like in the U.S., it's easier for me to be very disappointed with an outcome of a USA game, not because we don't have maybe the full level experience. I can get that, but there's already a culture of violence that we have. Like it comes from football, whether you played or you didn't play, it's inherent within the U.S. culture. So whenever I see players play, I expect you to throw your body like you don't give a damn about anything and want to be able to crush, because our power is size and that mentality to want to dominate on anything, or at least it was up until recently. But then in Brazil, because the culture sports-wise is a finesse culture, similar to Spain, where in Portugal, where your backs, I would expect the backs to be phenomenal. It is the easiest component where you can be able to have fast, quick guys. They might be smaller, so maybe more tackle liabilities, but should be offensively much more viable if they can get a proper 9-10 connection to be able to distribute out. Whereas from the forwards, I could argue that the size might exist there, but I don't know if the mentality of violence exists there. And that, I think, becomes the drawback for a team to build around that kind of culture, where can we rely on our forwards to overcome the pain, and essentially have the need for dominance. I don't feel Brazilians want to dominate, and I think it's probably one of the positive things that make the country so great is not a need to dominate the other country. It's we want to win, and as a forward, you need to dominate.
No, for me, if you're going to go in and actually look at that squad at the moment, it's really forwards based. I think modern day rugby, you need forward based. Do they need that mentality of getting a bit harder, smashing down that door in this competition? Can they do it? Yes. But as soon as you're going to get to teams that's two sides, you got a tactical side, you got a mentality side, and you got the fitness side, and all that. Can they do it on the international stage the same way? I think you got to have a look and say, listen, what's our strength in this team? Right. Let's go and say we've got two phenomenal kickers off the ball. Should we work harder and get another game plan? That 10-man game, 10 just keep us in their half. Could we do that? Then it goes down, do we have the rugby IQ on the field? Do we have the leadership on the field? Is the right person the leader there? I think that's a big part as well. Do you got that leadership group on the field making decisions and not just waiting from the coach on the radio saying, oh, we got to do this, we got to do that. Right. So it's a lot. Having a look what they've got. Yes, forward play should be the main aim. But then again, we're thinking of attacking. If you're in a Cobra side, you've been bottom of the lot for a few years now. Right. Or maybe not bottom, but you're the bottom two.
I mean, you're 1 or 2. It's still
you're the bottom. Yeah. So the thing is, you're always going to defend way more than what you attack.
Right.
So should we be more defensive orientated and spend a lot of time on our defense systems and tackles? Even though we tackle a lot, we got a 78% tackle completion rate. But shouldn't we just push that standard way higher and make sure we defend really, really well? Defend because at the moment, yes, we win our scrums. Right. We win our lineouts. Good. Okay. But are we good enough on the defense on our scrum and lineout? Scrum, yes, most probably. I think we've got a good, solid scrum. On the lineout, no. Can we stop them more? No. Well, that's worrisome because if you go into that first game against Tarukas, well, if you say that now, even though they're a new team, they're from Tucumán. So what's happening in Tucumán? That's forward play. So you got to have your biggest forwards, a massive defensive effort for them not to just get the ball as close to the line as possible. And we more. Boom, try. Are we going to do it again?
That goes back to, I think, that mentality, especially from a defensive position. It's that mentality that you have to then say, if I'm not going to score, I'm going to make them have to earn every single meter that they're going to take. Yeah. And at that point, and I think it also, you spoke of fitness as well. That fitness then has to escalate high enough to be able to maintain a bend but not break situation, but not so much that it reduces the size of your squad. Where
So you got to have a look at your bench. The rugby is not 15 players anymore. That's way early 2000s. Rugby moved on. It's 23 players. That's a game now. Your bench is as important. If you delay your bench, well, it's just the other team is getting a bit more energy. They're going forward. They're getting this movement. So your bench is important. Are you going to say, listen, props, you're playing 40 minutes. Yeah, your first row, props, hookers. You going 40 minutes. Second half, these guys going. If they're injured, the other prop could come back on. So that's fine. So he's resting, so he can come back on. Your lock and your flankers. Most people you should change them because they got to do a lot of running.
Right.
So your bench, yes, is very important. And what time you're sending them on. That's very important in modern day rugby. Your bench is not there in case there's an injury. Well, then you see as well cramps creeping in the Cobras team. And you're like, well, that's a problem. Yeah. Right. So is the fitness up to there? Something is wrong.
Right.
If you can struggle with cramps the whole time. Or you got to say, listen, you know what? These guys are only going to play 40 minutes. Change them halftime. The other props are coming on. And play a better game. And keep your level as high as possible. Because you're in a defensive game. Defense takes a lot of effort out of you. A lot of energy. So, yes, you got to change. They got to have a look at that. Can they field a good bench? I think they can. I think they got enough quality there to field a good bench.
But do you think that maybe
everybody a run in this type of competition, you're throwing millions, and I'm talking millions of reais into the drain, and you're not really helping anybody. So, or they got to come out and say, listen, you know what? This is our plan. Yeah. Talk to the public and say, listen, you know what? Because it's not a big public you have for rugby. You've got a small public for rugby. Be open to them and say, listen, this is the plan. We're going to try to do this year. Let's see if it works.
Yeah.
Understand? People will they will either love the plan or hate the plan. But in the end, they will have a look. They've got an idea what's going on. But if you're in the dark, well, nobody's going to enjoy that. Understand?
No,
so,
I think that's real. And I think there goes to something that, especially if you're trying to bring in more people to watch the games. Because I do think that also can add a motivation to teams playing better. But one point that you said about like the bench for like the Cobras, and even who can say for the national team is solid. But to some extent, I wonder if it's really, you kind of have a team full of bench players masquerading as starters. And so whenever you do have that, of course, a replacement, it doesn't change the level of play, just maybe hope the strategy wears the other team down a little bit more so than it do prior. And what I mean by just a team of essentially B players is that it's not this motivation, the physical might be there, but the mental might not be. The mental might be there, but the physical is not fitting all the way through. And so whenever you're talking about the strategy of bringing everybody together, obviously, the scouting is messed up. So you're not finding new players. You're not developing risky players. And you're not essentially bringing in new energy that not only ignites the players that are there and pushes competition up, which pushes the level of play higher, but you're not engaging the audience to want to invest into the players, which will simultaneously also increase the level of play, because you have people that you're playing for and that people are rooting for you. You're going to come out so much harder, which is why we like international so hard, because everybody can feel like a representation that's happening there.
You got to be clear and open. I think that's you got to be clear, open, and honest.
Yeah,
that's the main thing. Don't be dishonest. For me, and that's the weird thing. Everybody's always talking about it, but nobody is talking out loud. Understand? So, is it sad to see the Cobras in this state? Yes, it is. Could we do something about it? Yes, we can. What I would like to see is all of a sudden they got to say, listen, this is our number one team or our number one squad. This is starters. This is my bomb squad. This is the guys that are coming in second half to keep the pace of the game.
Right.
And you're going to change with these following guys. Boom, boom, boom. So they know, listen, I've got to give everything. I've got 40 minutes to do that. Or after half time, you got another 10 minutes and we change you. Because half time you rest as well. You get back in. And with technology and all that, you can see what place is really peaking and which one.
Right.
So with the forwards, definitely should change them earlier. Should the senior players in the team put up their hand and play better rugby? Yes, definitely. They if you got experience and you're at that level, you should deliver. That's it. I don't think you should be substandard. If you're substandard, you should have your own objective. Your own goal is to be better. Because I'm a senior player. If the juniors come in, yes, they're looking up to you. But they're also there to take your position.
Right, which is their point.
Which is excellent. You got to get that competition within the squad.
Yeah.
And you got to get that group functioning better. Well, if you look at a sevens, yes, it was 2 long weeks in South Africa they had there, and it didn't go well for them. For the sevens, is it a bad thing? Did they have enough time training together? Or are they just training 15s and then, we got a sevens competition, let's just go and play sevens and come back? Right. Should we say, listen, there's a 7 squad of 12 players, and they focus just on sevens. They are with the coach. They focus sevens every 2 weeks. They in camp for us to play a better quality sevens. You can use sevens, the academy for sevens, as a benchmark for other players when they move into 15s. They're playing good rugby. It's not that you from sevens you come to 15s and you're not playing good rugby.
Right.
You develop a lot of skills in sevens that you actually need in 15s.
Right.
So could they do that? I think yes. Would it be nice to see Brazil on the 7 circuit? Yes, men's, because we've got the girls there. They're doing wonderful at the moment. They just beat Australia.
Yep.
The girls are happy. You can see they're smiling on their faces. That's a good environment they're in. So congratulations to that coach there, creating the environment. Is that same environment with the Cobras at the moment? No, I don't think so. Do they look unhappy? Yes, they do look unhappy. And that's body language. Body language speaks sometimes way more than words. Could we do something about it? Yes. Especially for the sevens. Is those guys that went there our best sevens players? Or is it just because they're part of the Cobras they're going? Well, I can think of another 1 or 2 players that's really good that should be there. Coming to the women's side, they just left for Portugal or Spain. They're going to play there. So good luck to them. Is it the best is on the plane? Because the World Cup here is the best on that plane. Is that more or less your squad ready for the World Cup? Because everybody is starting to get their teams together. So you basically know, well, who's our sevens moving in and who's not. Most probably not. Is there better girls in Brazil that's not in the team? Yes, there's definitely. I would like to know why have they not been called up and say, listen, man, you got good talent. Is the coaches actually watching the other games? Are they watching games, or is it just by say, I'm in with these guys, you are in? Or is it because I'm in São Paulo, I'm in the team? That's tough. And you can't blame the players.
Right. No, it's not on them.
Everybody wants to represent the country. And if I'm in a position of, inside line because I'm in São Paulo, that's it. Well, most probably there's a girl from Santa Catarina who's a good flank. And she's tall. Well, shouldn't we give her a chance as well?
Right.
Then flying somebody out of New Zealand or Australia.
Right.
Yeah. And it's tough. What quality of rugby are they playing there? Are they playing better quality than here? Do they have more game time there?
And that's the thing.
It's a lot of questions.
Right.
And I just think be open to the public and say, listen, you know what? This is the plan. But do we have the best there? And don't shoot down the people that say, listen, you know what? I think there's 2 girls you got to have a look at. And then don't respond back. Or the message coming through is that I don't need to listen to you. Well,
Right.
No, you don't have to listen to me. Not at all.
But it would help.
I don't say you have to listen. But there's more people with opinion. There's people there that can see, listen, we work with these girls. You've seen them play. Why is this one in the team and not that one?
Right.
Understand? So, yeah, that's sad, because that negative impact becomes negative on the playing public in Brazil.
Right.
And that's wrong.
And it makes people disinterested.
That's wrong.
And it makes people disinterested. And I think that overall ends up hurting the sport for everybody, because nobody wants to go to something that they don't have a motivation in. But let's go ahead and wrap this up. And any final words on what we talked, especially within the development of Brazilian rugby at the highest level?
At the highest level, what can we do? The plan is not working. So from development, what we're going to do is the competition's right. We got to sit around the table. I suggest invite a few coaches from, or the presidents of federations, get a group together, sit around the table and say, listen, the plan we've got now is not working. We got to work it out. Talk to rugby people. Don't talk to people who's not in touch with the game, who's sitting in the office, don't really know what's going on, or they just know some polo rugby. You got to get representative of everyone, and get a neutral person in to guide these people. Understand? You should say, well, get a neutral person in, say, listen, World Rugby got these people. Yeah? Or if you got to say, listen, don't get somebody in from Argentina, he's going to have that mentality. Get somebody in from World Rugby and say, listen, we got to change the system here. What's the best system we can do? Before you go in there, put the egos to the side, put your pride to the side. We got to decide now for the next 10 years, what's the best way forward? And that's important for rugby, for men's especially. Women's rugby is the best team going to play in the World Cup.
Right.
It's the best players already practicing going forward. Got to have a look at that. I don't want to say too much about a women's team. I'm the ex-coach, so I don't want to get into too much of that.
Hey, look, man. The term X is the key term right there. You know.
So it's, are the best players on the plane? Definitely not. What's the plan? I think they've got to be clearer what's the plan. What do they want the clubs to do? Because at the moment, the clubs got to pay for everything, and they're also the ones at the back end of the line. So you think, well, there's going to come a time where the clubs is going to say, listen, you know what? Off you go. We're going to do our own thing now. What's the job of the federations? So there got to be a clear definition. Say, listen, federation got to do this, clubs got to do this. And what's the pathway? It's impossible for Brazil Rugby to talk to all the clubs. That's impossible. That's not worth it. So you got to get into a pyramid system. You got to create that pathway. You don't create that pathway, you're gonna. And I think that's where Brazil is sitting now. We're sitting here, well, things are not working. We got to change. We can't carry on beating this dead horse any longer, because it's been going on for 5+ years. You got to say, listen, it's time to cut. Yeah? Cut, and we got to have a look. Is the right people in the right positions? That's the first thing. We got a new CEO who's just standing in until they find another one. Man, give the guy the job and say, listen, because now you're just gonna, standing on two balls there, you're not gonna move forward. Give the guy the job, saying, listen, this is what we need to do going forward. Because if this guy can't make any changes and you guy come in and he wants to make changes, you know how's a new broom, huh? Is it the right thing? Well, we got to have a look. Get the right people in the right positions. Create a pathway for players that they know what's working. And then, man, I think we got to stand behind the Cobras. It has been horrifying to watch them the last couple of games. To think they've still got 3 games in front of them with teams all above them who's playing good rugby. It's going to be tough. Should there be changes? maybe the senior players in the team should stand up to the coach and say, listen, we question a few things. Shouldn't we just get the best team out there and they play week in, week out?
See,
the other
ego.
team,
Ego is always going to be the main factor. People, and we know this. Always difficult.
For me, is get your best team out there. They're going to play.
Yeah.
Perfect. Give them the minutes. The other ones, man, create a barbarian team and say, listen, you're going to play against these players. Yes, you can do it. Yeah, you're already investing so much in São Paulo. There's so many teams there.
Right.
Do it so they get minutes. But if you're just going to use this competition for players to get minutes, man, use that money and use it better.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I'll add one last part onto it is also make sure you can find ways that you're engaging and re-engaging in that audience. I believe from my positioning that Brazil rugby is following a similar pathway that the US did, just maybe like 5 years behind, maybe 8 years behind. But I think there's an opportunity for them to be able to actually catch an audience that's out here because there's not a lot of competition in terms of viewership, in terms of eyes for other sports. Football exists, and obviously that's always going to be number one, but it's not the competition. You just want to be able to bring more people in, and I think that will do wonders in being able to spread people outside of Sao Paulo, outside of Rio, but really also engage that administration to be the right kind of greedy. Be the kind of greedy that says, I want to get everybody so that I can enrich myself. I'm okay with that because you clearly want to be able to get the best, which goes back to what you're talking about. Can we get the best administration? Can we get the best players? Can we have the best version of a competition that we can put together and uniquely places us in a position where we can make innovation with our rugby and how we present it. And I think Brazil has all that potential to be able to do it. It just needs to.
They have. Right. I've been saying that for years. It's a sleeping giant.
Yeah.
It's absolutely a sleeping giant. If you wake up this giant and you do the right thing, I can do wonders. But
that's a topic for our next pod. We got to get people to come back. That's the next one.
So next week we're gonna have a chat again, and we're gonna have a look. Cobras is playing again this weekend. The women are playing this weekend as well. So yeah, next week we're having a chat as well. Most probably they're gonna have somebody else in the studio, having a chat with us. But yeah, that's it. So if you want to know more, if you want to reach out to us. If you've got questions, let us ask the question. You don't have to ask the question.
Tell them where to reach out. Tell them how to do it because people are simple.
Well, we got Trycast is the name of this podcast. Go to YouTube. It's on YouTube as well. We got Instagram page. Go there, have a look, and comment on it. If you don't want to comment, that's okay as well. Give us a like if you like it. If you don't, or you want us to speak in Portuguese, we've got two gringos can speak Portuguese. Yeah. So the next one will be way more Portuguese. But for now, having a little read is always good.
Sounds good, man. I love it. See you guys later. Cheers.